Hi everyone! We often dive into the world of expensive high-end gear on this channel, and that can be a lot of fun, but let's face it, these price tags often go well beyond what we can or want to spend on our cameras. That's why we're shifting gears today and focusing on something equally exciting, affordable yet very capable bird and wildlife photography combos that will give you amazing photographs in the field. When we're working on smaller budget and looking to find a great deal on a camera and lens combination, it often makes sense to look for used cameras and lenses rather than brand new gear. Older cameras in particular usually still work very well, but oftentimes only cost half or less than what a new camera body would cost. I always recommend investing in the lens first and then think about the camera after that, because a lens usually stays with us for many years, whereas camera bodies often come and go. Lenses also hold their value particularly well, and oftentimes I've bought a lens, used it for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then sold it for almost the same price. For most brands, I would definitely recommend trying to get a mirrorless cameras because the advancement over the last few years has been so great, with much higher frame rates, much better ISO and noise performance, and much better autofocusing. In saying all that, having mirrorless cameras available now has not made DSLR cameras any worse, and there are still fantastic cameras out there that can be had for a bargain price. When I'm looking at a capable wildlife and especially bird photography combo, I'm usually trying to find a lens that gets me to at least 600mm of focal length and ideally 800mm or beyond. Now that's not always possible, but getting to that 600mm range especially is quite valuable in the field because it will make your life much easier. If you have a lens that kind of taps out to like 400mm, you will often struggle to get close enough to small birds, for instance. Now there's definitely different ways to get there. We can either have a lens that has a 600 or 800mm focal range, or we can look also at cameras that have a crop factor sensor of like 1.5 or 1.6. These cameras will allow you to use 100 to 400mm lens, for instance, but the effective focal length or the field of view with these cameras then will be, for instance, from 160 to 640mm. So you can have a quite small 100 to 400mm lens on a crop camera and still get into that 600mm range. Canon is definitely the brand with the biggest variety of affordable camera and lens options in our $3,000 or around 5,000 Aussie dollar range. Since there are many affordable and fantastic working mirrorless cameras available in the Canon range, I would probably opt for these over DSLR cameras. The main reasons I'm saying is that we have much higher frame rates, better autofocus that can actually track the bird for you, and also much better noise performance overall. When it comes to camera bodies, we have a few crop bodies and a few full frame bodies available within our budget, and it's almost hard to pick because there's so many different camera bodies available. The first body we have that I think is quite capable and yet very well priced at just $980 is the Canon R10. And the R10 comes with a 24 megapixel 1.6 crop APS-C sensor. It's quite small, so if you have very big hands, it might not be the perfect camera for you, but overall it seems very capable in the field. It has eye tracking autofocus, shoots up to 23 frames per second with the electronic shutter mode, has a few issues with the rolling shutter, but overall is a very capable camera in the field that I know many people have used and have gotten some fantastic results. Next in the lineup is the Canon R7, priced around that $1,500 mark, and I know many people use and love that camera. If you're one of them, let me know in the comments. This is definitely a very capable camera body that's a little bit larger than the R10, so it lies better in your hand, has fantastic eye tracking autofocus, and shoots at up to 30 frames per second. Now there's a few things with this camera that could definitely be improved, like more consistent autofocus, less noisy mechanical shutter, and less rolling shutter. But overall, a fantastic camera body that has given me some great results in the field and gives you fantastic reach. Next in the lineup, we have our first full frame camera, the nice and small Canon R8 that comes equipped with a 24 megapixel full frame sensor and a very capable autofocus system alongside some fantastic noise performance. So this is a very capable camera with a slightly better autofocusing system than a Canon R7, for instance. The only downside for us bird and nature photographers potentially is that the 24 megapixel full frame sensor doesn't give you as much reach as these crop cameras, and a 100 to 400mm lens, for instance, only gets you to 400mm. So you might have to end up cropping a lot more into your images, and then at the same time you'll also be left with less resolution on those crops. So this is something to keep in mind, but overall the Canon R8 is a fantastic camera that is super capable and should make many of you very happy. What stands out about this camera is not only the fantastic autofocus, but also that it can shoot up to 40 frames per second and only cost around that $1,500 US as well. Lastly, you could also be looking at the used first generation Canon R6 body. This is a very capable camera that comes with the same autofocusing system you can also find in the R5. The only downside with that camera is that it only comes with a 20 megapixel sensor, and it also overheats a lot in most video modes. So if you plan to film a lot, then this camera is probably not the best, and something like an R8 would be much more capable. But overall, a used Canon R6 could also be a fantastic choice, and you will take some amazing images with that camera. And if you're really lucky, you might even get a used R6 Mark II or Canon R5 between $1,500 and $2,000 US. Now this won't happen every day, but there's probably a few deals out there if you're lucky. And if you can get your hands on one of these two cameras, you'll definitely can't go wrong, and they'll give you amazing performance, great autofocus, high image quality, and then overall amazing experience in the field. And both cameras can also have that battery grip. The biggest difference between the two is that the R6 Mark II is a 24 megapixel full frame camera, whereas the R5 is a 45 megapixel full frame camera. I don't want to talk too much about these two cameras because I don't think it's very likely we can find a fantastic deal on these on an everyday basis, but if you can get your hands on one of these, you probably won't regret it. When it comes to the autofocusing performance, especially with the cheaper lenses like the f11 800 and 600mm, the Canon R6 Mark II definitely has an advantage and has a wider autofocusing area available than most other cameras, and also gives us the best image quality and overall performance with some of these cheaper lenses. And that's one of the reasons why I say that I would often recommend the R6 Mark II to people if you can somehow squeeze it into your budget, because it will give you fantastic autofocusing performance and great image quality. So while an R6 and an R8 probably give you slightly better performance than an R7, I know that for many applications, the R7 probably makes the most sense because it gives you that little bit of extra effective focal length or field of view that will allow you to have more pixels on your subjects. When it comes to the lenses, Canon has also done quite well in creating a very capable lineup of lenses that we can still squeeze into our $3,000 budget. The main drawback of these lenses, and the main reason that Canon was able to make them relatively small and cheap, is that they all feature relatively slow f-stops. So it's definitely not the easiest task to shoot with these lenses in low light situations, but in situations where you have good light, for instance, you get amazing results on a budget. Some of these lenses are so well priced that we may even be able to get two of them into our 3K budget. The first lens in the lineup is maybe Canon's most underrated lens, the RF 100 to 400mm lens that goes from f5.6 to f8. Whenever I use this lens in the field, I'm quite surprised how capable it is. It has amazing sharpness and amazing image stabilization. So handheld video and photo is no problem at all, and the images turn out fantastic. Now when it comes to the background blur, it may not be as nice as a 100 to 500mm lens or some of the prime lenses, but for the price of $649 US, you definitely can't go wrong with this lens and will be a staple in many camera bags. Next we have the Canon f11 600 and 800mm zoom prime lenses. I'm saying zoom prime lenses because to actually be able to use the lenses, you have to kind of zoom them out and lock them into position, even though they're fixed aperture prime lenses. And the biggest downside of these lenses is probably the fixed aperture of f11. So firstly, that means in low light, you're kind of limited because you're stuck on f11, so you'll likely have to use very high ISOs. And for video, this can also be annoying because you can't change your aperture at all. It will always be f11. At the same time, in better light, for instance, for shooting shorebirds at the beach, these lenses can be totally amazing. They're lightweight and give you a lot of reach in a super small package. And with the price of $799 for the 600 and $999 for the 800mm lens, they're also very well priced. And where else can you get 800mm for under $1,000 that gives you great image quality? The biggest downside with both of these lenses is that instead of having the full EVF for autofocusing available, especially on the older mirrorless cameras, they only have a sort of small square box in the middle of the viewfinder available for autofocusing. When we're photographing with more budget-friendly gear, one thing that is very important to learn is image editing. And I'm saying that because with the high-end gear, we often get the best possible RAW files that are nice and crisp and sharp and very clear. Whereas with the lower-end gear, we often get files that are a little bit more hazy, have a little bit more of a color cast, or have a little bit of a halo here and there. And then fixing up these images is very important to make them look very similar to these high-end photos in the end. And I would love to help you to learn better image editing and become more confident in the image editing process and get amazing results out of your own photos with my masterclass, my pro sets, and my brush pack. With my pro sets, I allow you with just one click to get amazing results from your RAW files. And in my masterclass, I teach you step by step everything you need to know to transform your RAW files into fantastic looking final images. And with my brush pack, I make a few things in Photoshop so much easier for you. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check it out down there in the description. Before we move on to some other brands, there's two more Canon lenses we should be talking about. The EF 100 to 400mm version 2 lens and the new 200 to 800mm lens. Both of these lenses we should be able to squeeze into our 3,000 US dollar or 5,000 Aussie dollar budget. Choosing the 200 to 800mm lens will definitely make it a bit harder to find a capable camera because our budget is kind of squeezed by buying that lens, but at the same time you're getting a fantastic lens that will likely stick with you for a very long time. I've been using the 200 to 800mm lens over the last little while and it has yielded me some fantastic images in the field, and I just love being able to zoom all the way from 200 to 800mm. The other lens that's very capable and should be available within our budget is the Canon 100 to 400mm version 2 lens. This is a very capable lens. The only downside is that it's not a new mirrorless lens, so you actually have to buy an adapter to adapt it. But at the same time, this is a lens that has great image stabilization, great autofocusing, and gives you an overall nice performance in the field. Now, the Canon part of this video has definitely gotten quite long because there's so many interesting options available, and it's actually not easy to pick a clear winner. So what would be your pick if you picked that Canon combo, or do you own one of these combos already? Let me know in the comments what's your pick and how you're going with the combos that you already own. Next up is Nikon, and this is one brand where I actually find it kind of difficult to recommend a perfect bird and wildlife photography combo within our $3,000 budget. And we might actually have to look towards the DSLR cameras like a D500 or D800 or D850 to find the best deal. Now, these DSLR cameras are definitely among the best, if not the best DSLR cameras ever made, so you can't go wrong with them. But at the same time, you'll likely end up buying a 200 to 500mm f-mount lens with them. And the only downside I see with a combo of like a D500 and a 200 to 500mm lens is that you will probably want to upgrade to a mirrorless system within the next few years. So you may end up buying something now that you will have to replace probably at a lower cost later on. So what else can we do? Well, there's a very capable and very attractive and well-priced Z-mount lens available, the 180 to 600mm lens that goes from f5.6 to 6.3. I've been using this lens many times in the field, and it's definitely one of these lenses that you buy once and then probably keep for a very long time. So investing into that lens probably makes a little bit more sense than buying a used 200 to 500mm lens, but at the same time, we're then kind of having a little bit of trouble finding a capable mirrorless camera that also fits within our budget in the Nikon lineup. I've been mainly shooting with the Nikon Z8 and the Z9, and they are very capable, have great autofocusing systems and give us fantastic image quality, but at the same time, these cameras alone are well beyond our budget. So we have to look elsewhere in the Nikon lineup, and we can probably find something like a Z50 or Z6 Mark II or Z6 Mark III used, and these would still fit within our budget, but they come with the downside that the autofocusing system is not as capable as some of the Canon systems or what you can find in the Z8 and the Z9, for instance. At the same time, you're definitely investing in the lens, and maybe one idea could be to buy like a used Z6 Mark II, use it with the 180 to 600mm lens for a little while, and then upgrade to a better camera later on when Nikon brings out some more well-priced mirrorless options that also have very capable autofocusing systems. One advantage of the Nikon system is definitely that they also have other quite well-priced prime lenses available. So if you enjoy the hobby a lot and you want to buy a prime lens, for instance, you find the 600 and 800mm PF lenses that are not only small in size, but also quite well priced for what they are. So buying into the Nikon system is definitely not a bad choice, especially if you think that you're going to continue growing your camera gear. But at the same time, at least at the moment, it's kind of difficult to find the perfect camera body that fits within our budget. So what would you do if you're looking at buying a Nikon camera or currently own a budget Nikon combo? When it comes to Sony, we kind of find ourselves in a similar situation to Nikon because they have a very capable and super popular wildlife lens, the f5.6 to 6.3 200 to 600mm lens that I've used extensively in the field and has always given me amazing results, and I know many other people who also use that lens and love it. And it's also very well priced at just about that $2,000 mark. However, when it comes to Sony, it's also kind of difficult to find a camera body that still fits within our $3,000 budget. There's a few options available, but a lot of the most capable cameras are also kind of priced outside of our budget. So looking at the lineup, our best options are probably a used Sony a7 Mark III that comes with 24 megapixels and also 10 frames per second. Now these are not the most advanced camera bodies, but should still give you good results in the field, and maybe down the track you can find like a used A9 or used A1 if there's an A1 Mark II coming out, for instance, and eventually upgrade the camera body. But for now, that's probably our best choices when it comes to full frame cameras. But Sony also has a relatively capable lineup of APS-C crop cameras with a 1.5 crop factor. And the one camera that stands out to me there is the quite capable and relatively new A6700, a 26 megapixel APS-C crop camera. I probably wouldn't go and look at the more used APS-C cameras like the A6600 or the A6400 because the autofocus is likely not going to perform as well as in a like A6700 or like some of the other Sony cameras. So I know it's going to be tight squeezing that A6700 into our budget, but it's probably worthwhile because we'd also get a nice effective focal length on a 200 to 600 of like 300 to 900 millimeters, which would definitely be awesome in the field. Picking the right wildlife combo for Sony is actually kind of interesting because of a clear-cut winner in the 200 to 600mm lens, but when it comes to picking a camera body, the waters get a little bit more murky, and my pick for the moment at least would probably be the A6700 or one of the more capable full-frame mirrorless cameras if you can get a good deal on them. What would be your choice for Sony cameras, or what combos are you currently using that's within our budget range? And if you own a capable wildlife combo already but not quite sure how to set it up properly to get the best results, make sure to check out my PDF camera setup guides down there in the description, and also my setup YouTube videos where I teach you exactly how you get the most out of your camera and get those amazing photos in the field. One option to find a more well-priced lens, especially for Nikon and Sony, would also be to look at third-party manufacturers like Tamron or Sigma. They both produce very capable and well-priced lenses like the 150 to 600mm Sigma Contemporary lens. The only downside with some third-party gear is that there's some limitations on how well it works. Initially I said they work well with Nikon and Sony because there's some issues with Canon, especially the more modern mirrorless cameras, and the compatibility with some of these Tamron and Sigma lenses. They still work well, but for instance they have sort of some autofocus jittery and are sometimes not as good when it comes to the image stabilization. Even on the Sony system, there's still some limitations with the third-party lenses. For instance, they're limited to just 15 frames per second, and you also cannot use teleconverters on third-party lenses within the Sony system. So if you can, I would normally recommend to go through the original manufacturer's lenses because they usually have the best autofocusing performance and also especially the best image stabilization performance. These third-party lenses can be great and very well-priced options, but at the same time they do come with some limitations. Of course, there's not only Nikon, Canon and Sony, there's also fantastic other brands available like Fuji, Panasonic and Olympus or OM systems. And especially in our budget, there is some very attractive options available from these brands. I looked at Fuji first, but it's very hard to find a combo that will fit within our budget because we have the excellent X-H2S camera, but then the main lens they would have available would be the 150 to 600mm lens, and then it's kind of hard to fit that within our budget. So I wanted to mention it here, but we probably can't actually afford it in our scenario. The one combo that stands out to me here because it's so small, well priced and very capable with some fantastic features that can only be found in high-end cameras otherwise is the OM1 Olympus or OM Systems OM1 camera combined with their 100 to 400mm lens. The OM1 comes equipped with a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. That means it has a 2 times crop factor. So the 100 to 400mm f5.6 to 6.3 lens has an effective focal length on that camera of 200 to 800mm. The main downside with these micro four thirds cameras is that they have a lot more of a busy background because the f-stop on this lens, for instance, is equivalent to f13 on a full frame camera. So for instance, the Canon 200 to 800mm lens, even though it has the same effective focal length, will have a smoother background than the Olympus combo. But other than that, I think this combo is super attractive. It's not only well priced, but it also offers us fantastic features like pre-capture, very capable eye-tracking autofocus, I think up to 50 frames per second, and all around great performance. Now you get a little bit more noise in your files with the Micro Four Thirds cameras, but with modern noise reduction software like DX or Pure Raw 4 or Dolby Enhance, you'll still get fantastic results. Recently, there has also been an upgrade released to the OM1, the OM1 Mark II, and since then I think there should be some nice and well-priced used OM1 cameras available that should allow us to fit the 100 to 400mm lens and the OM1 within our budget. And with that, you not only get a super lightweight combo, but also a lot of effective focal length and overall a fantastic package, maybe even more so than any other camera can offer in that sort of range. And down the track, you might also be able to upgrade to something like an f4 300mm prime lens that will even give you a little bit better image quality. One last option could be the new Panasonic G9 Mark II with their Leica 100 to 400mm lens that goes from f4 to f6.3. Now that combo is also slightly out of our budget, but overall this should also give you fantastic performance in the field, especially when it comes to the video features. The G9 Mark II definitely has some of the best video features available across a lot of these cameras we've looked at today, and would definitely get you some great results in the field when it comes to video work. For photography, I've seen that it has a few sort of drawbacks. For instance, the viewfinder kind of gets stuck a little bit or has a bit of a lag when you're shooting in the electronic shutter mode. So shooting fast action is kind of difficult with that camera, and it also seems like that the buffer clears relatively slow and you might get stuck on a buffering camera for a little while. So overall, it wouldn't be my preferred photo camera, but definitely a nice option if you want to do a lot of video work. So all in all, we are definitely spoiled for choice at our $3,000 or $5,000 Aussie budget. And there's fantastic cameras and lenses to pick from that will give you some amazing images in the field. So what would be the combo of choice for you in our budget range? For me personally, I'm most intrigued by the Canon and Olympus offerings. They both seem to offer us great cameras and lenses that also match nicely together. Most of these other brands have very capable lenses and cameras available, but it's hard to find a well-matching kit within our $3,000 budget. I hope you guys enjoyed this journey into the world of more budget-friendly gear, and that I could give you some ideas of gear that might be just right for you and that will allow you to take those amazing photos. I would also love to hear from you in the comments. What's your current gear of choice in our $3,000 budget range? Are you planning to buy some? Have you already bought it? Let me know. Also, hit that like button if you liked that video. Check out my channel membership and hit that subscribe button. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.